All right, man. It's Bronzebird here with another video. So, what's coming across my desk as I do more of these videos, trying to figure out the cases that's going on this week, there's a central plot that I'm starting to figure out with a lot of the motives behind these mass shootings and, friends and family knowing that a relative got killed and all these news that's coming out here in the forefront about what's going on with specifically so-called black people being behind a lot of these mass shootings and stuff like that. But the one thing that seems to be the biggest alibi in this situation is always perspectives about bullying, in which the motives behind this is specifically about 2 to 3 cases of it being so-called black men as the perpetrators of these mass shooting events. A lot of the times they said that they was bullied by somebody else or they felt disrespected. They wasn't able to get the proper, answers from their parents, for example, in order to, feel more comfortable in their situation. And I pondered about this because I didn't know what to think about it. I wanted to obviously say maybe they should have seen a therapist or they should have been able to talk to someone. They should have had more cases. And, one of the brothers that I had a conversation with, you know, his narrative is to, blame black men train. His whole entire thing was to say is just ignore them, in which that's not a real credible solution when dealing with someone who could be mentally ill, may not be able to express themselves the way that we express ourselves when it comes to being bullied or having to confront somebody that is getting on your nerves. Now, this case in particular that I started to spend a little bit of time on with the Chesapeake Walmart shooter was actually a pretty much interesting story because there is something within this story in which I wanted to take upon myself and understand what was going on because there was also a death note that was in his phone that was found after he did the whole entire shooting. Andre Bing, who is 31 years old and killed, I believe, over 6 people in Walmart. Um, he was a supervisor, overnight supervisor. He's been working there for 12 years. And, the story is now, he shot people and he was frustrated and all these different things. But he said that he was moved by a demonic spirit, which is something that seems to be very interesting to me when I do this story, when I cover this whole entire thing that's going on with this narrative about being possessed by the devil. Certain people may say he's crazy, or certain people may say, he doesn't know what he's talking about, or he's just out of his loop. But there's always something there where people have to pay attention to how someone is giving out this story, or specifically this in a death note, which I'm going to read. I'm going to give my assessment on it as I read it. So, Pete. So it says here on 8 News, to start off, this is some quotes that was in the whole entire thing where I found it very interesting in doing this reading the story and researching. It says, my only wish would have been to start over from scratch and that my parents would have paid closer attention to my social deficits. Sorry, everyone, but I did not plan this. I promise things just fell into place like I was led by the Satan. And then it says the note ends with one last line begging for forgiveness. My God, forgive me for what I'm going to do. And what's very ironic about this is, a lot of the times, before a lot of these people decide to go on self-deleting missions and go out and try to not spare their own lives, but basically kill everyone else. They always use God as a way to talk to God, but God is not hearing your prayers, man. A lot of these people will always say, God this, God that, but God does not like wickedness. You know what I mean? If you're trying to have a relationship with God, you would have never planned on what you did. A lot of this comes from frustration and not being able to get the thoughts out because there's something that's blocking him mentally, right? I don't know what it's like. It seems like he could have been a very much an introverted individual, but yet still suffer from a lot of mental conditions in which he took it out on people when he got too much frustrated. And see, that seems to be the line of a lot of these different things that's going on nowadays, especially with these young so-called black men that's getting involved in these mass shootings over someone who's bothering them or feeling like they can't confront an individual who they feel some type of opposition from. But the thing about it is, the advice that I can't even really give advice in a case, but it is always important to understand your child as they're growing up. You know what I'm saying? I know they get older and they out on their own, but it's always a good thing so that they can understand. You and your child have a conversation about what's going on, what's their well-being like. If they can't see a therapist, you be a therapist for them. They should be able to come to you when there's problems, at least in my opinion. But I'm going to get to what the death note says. Sorry, God, I failed you. This was not your fault, but my own. I failed to listen to the groans of the Holy Spirit, which made me a poor representation of you. I was harassed by idiots with low intelligence and a lack of wisdom. I remained strong through most of the torment, but my dignity was completely taken away beyond repair by my phone getting hacked. Now, that's a funny way to start off a paragraph in which, he admits that he failed God, that he failed, his relationship with God. And he was tainted by what he would deem idiots with low intelligence, but probably people who just didn't understand him. That's just another way of basically letting that all out. I don't think it has anything to do with, them being, I'm not trying to be, literal, but usually that's just an insult and just saying that those people didn't understand him. He was on a different type of plane, and I want to say subconsciously, I want to say by like how his thoughts was, that he was just on a different plane that a lot of people didn't understand him. He vibrated at a different level than most or other people around him in his job per se. But let's continue. I can't say that they were the only ones that lacked intelligence and wisdom. I was just as guilty and failed my management team and everyone that ever loved me by convincing them that I was normal. Blotched out, and the associates, I guess he's saying orchestrated, if they laughed and made subtle cold speeches, which I eventually figured out. I thought was my friend, but he betrayed me. Betrayal is one of the worst feelings next to regret. They laughed at me and said that I was like Jeffrey Dahmer. Hmm. I would have never killed anyone that entered my home. A few months back, I overheard talking to, and he told me that he had been trying to get rid of me since day one. After I heard that, I lashed out. The associates gave me evil, twisted grins, mocked me, and celebrated my downfall the last day. That's why they suffered the same fate as me. From maintenance was emanating with the Holy Spirit, which I could feel. People thought that she was crazy for walking out, but unlike me, she actually listened to the Holy Spirit, like, knew that they were antagonizing me. So on one day, she approached me in personnel and apologized to me. On her last day, she looked me in the eyes, terrified by a demonic aura. My true intent was never to murder anyone, believe it or not. I was actually one of the most loving people in the world if you would get to know me. I just wanted a wife that was equally yoked as I and obsessed over the thought, however, I didn't deserve a wife. I hope that people will learn from everyone's mistakes and truly love God and not the material possessions of the world. My only wish would have been to start over from scratch and that my parents would have paid closer attention to my social deficits. Sorry, everyone, but I did not plan this, I promise. Things just fell in place like I was led by the Satan. I have written songs in the past, though. I only did it when I realized that my phone was hacked and was giving the worst feeling imaginable. I wish I could have saved everyone from myself. I will spare because I have a special place for her in my heart because my mother died from cancer. Please let everyone know that bitter seed apricots are the cure for cancer and not the doctor. My God, forgive me for what I'm going to do. And a funny thing about reading that death note is that there's a lot of problems that I could really detach from reading a letter like that, that note that he put on his phone. You know, yeah, problem is like a lot of people say that they want to speak to God, but don't understand how to speak to God first and foremost. We're not perfect people. We all have our own struggle. We all have our ways of trying to deal with God, trying to get to know him. What is he capable of? What is he capable of doing? But being in the Holy Spirit and then being led by Satan is serving two masters. You can't sit up there and say that you love God or you trying to get to know God. You have a complicated relationship with God, but then you want to serve Satan. Which team are you on? You understand? And my thing about it to this young man, who unfortunately took the lives of the people at his job, there's a lot of things that go into it. First, him being stressed out by the corporate America life, because we already understand when it comes to corporate America, they do for the most part be on bullshit. And this is where we have to figure out as people, what is it that you want to do with your life? Figuring out an exit plan when you feel like something is stressing you out, because there are people at jobs that look for your worst, that have the worst intention when it comes to you. People who don't like you, people who think you're weird, people who don't think you deserve to be here, and all these different things. My things when I was working in corporate America was I'm all about the money. I'm not concerned with everybody else. I don't care what you think about me. I don't care if you think I'm different or you think that I'm weird and stuff like that. If you're not involved in my paycheck, if you're not involved in me getting paid, I don't care what you have to say. I've always thought that. So many situations people get caught up and they get mad because their coworker doesn't like them or snitching behind their back or making all these different things, man. Get to the money. That's what I always thought about when I was in corporate America. I'm just that type of dude. I never really cared for making friends and being cool with everybody. I was more or less concerned about doing what I need to do and getting on out of there. As soon as it came to my lunch break, I leave. As soon as it comes to me clocking in and clocking out, that's exactly what I did. And another thing that seems to be the root issue of these problems sometimes, and especially certain videos I did recently, is that they're trying to fill in the void of not having a good relationship or rapport with their parents, and instead wishing on the whole entire idea of having a partner, uh, you know, a woman that can fill in that void for them so that they can feel better. Now, my thing about it is I talk to men that have this problem sometimes. I tell brothers all the time, sometimes you don't need a woman. Sometimes you need yourself. You need to recognize how to be by yourself, being alone versus being lonely. You understand? And the fact of the matter is, certain people can't shake that concept. They need somebody else there with them in order to feel whole. And I must say that to brothers, you don't need a woman to make you feel whole. She's great. But if you can't feel great by yourself, how are you going to feel great with somebody else? Especially when things like work is getting to you and, you trying to have this great relationship with God or trying to get to know God. Sometimes it doesn't require a fellow flesh. It requires yourself. You understand? So my thing about it is there's certain things that he said in here, and I'm just kind of like, the demonic aura, these different things. He was confused. Maybe he had a frustrated relationship with God. He didn't know how to plan it. He felt like he wasn't heard. He felt like he wasn't seen. So that's the reason why he felt as if maybe he had to take his anger out on everybody that was at the store. And my thing is, if you have all these confrontations at work, you got to look for an exit strategy, man. It's like I said earlier. You got to start looking for another job in a comfortable environment. Maybe you got to go to a different Walmart. And the thing about it is, it's like you see these different things out here with these folks. Corporate America is a goddamn mess, man. I tell you that all the time, man. Corporate America is a mess because people will take their personal business with them to work. And then if it's like, sexual relationships around in the workplace, when things go sour, the next day they going at work and yelling at each other and saying, oh, you did this, you did that, or you slept with this person, you slept with that person. I've seen it all, man. But at the end of the day, hearing from this story, it's a lot that we need to dissect from this situation in particular. with Andre Binge, or Binge. You know, he was young, only 31 years old, you know, working in Walmart for 12 years. And I can understand when you work at a place for a number of years, it grows on you. But the thing about it is that I'm trying to understand was there needed to be more things that could have helped him instead of him grabbing a gun and shooting everybody. Now, you know, a lot of narratives can be driven out of this. Sometimes you got these knuckleheads on YouTube who sitting up there talking about black men are mass shooters because they have something against the so-called black man. Yeah, so-called black man has his own problems. We get that. We understand that. But you know, they spread all this false narrative propaganda to make it seem like the black man is so violent and all these different things. He's an enemy. He's this. He's that, man. And it's so sad to hear from people like that. And they'll use this situation to say black men is exactly like that. They are mass shooters, you know? So otherwise than that, make sure you give me your thoughts in the comment section. And before I go, make sure you like and subscribe. Peace.